Hello, I'm Esther Weiner, and we're welcoming you to our beautiful Hudson Valley Writers Center, to Slapering Press, and to our Slapering Press reading series. Slapering, for those of you who didn't guess, which is most of us, excuse me, is Old Dutch for Sleepy Hollow. Hey, right? This afternoon's event, the MFA Spotlight, is always a favorite of mine and a favorite of ours, and we're so glad you're here. I want to give you a little bit of background for those of you who haven't been here before. The Hudson Valley Writers Center and Slapering Press were founded in 1988 and 1990, respectively, by poet Margot Taft Stever and her husband, Don, and you see it worked out quite well. It did. If you look right here at all these beautiful chapbooks, and here at Abasud by Aaron Casedo Kimura, and here, Poems in Conversation and a Conversation, you will see samples of the chapbooks. One of the reasons I wanted to talk to you about this is this particular group of people reading today are MFA students, and we welcome you to please submit a manuscript, a chapbook manuscript during our reading period, and we can give you all the information about that. The press also publishes, as I said, a special conversation series in which a woman poet chooses an emerging poet to appear together in the chapbook. Before we go to all of you, I want to give you some information about another very special evening we do next week, the War and Peace evening, and that is November 10th on Zoom, and it features amongst a variety of poets the incomparable Dennis Nurksey. So please choose Zoom for that. I'm going to hand this over to my colleague, Jennifer Brandon, who is with the Slapering Press, who is the program director of the center and is filling in for Iain Haley Pollock today.
Thank you so much, Esther. It's great to be here today to celebrate the MFA students from CCNY and Manhattanville. As all of you know, I'm filling in for Iain Haley Pollock, the wonderful poet and the most supportive professor, program director, and boss. We all miss Iain's warmth and his impeccable skills of community building today, but we will celebrate him and all he has accomplished as a poet, including his recent PSA award for the best manuscript in progress, and that manuscript's acceptance by Alice James Books, and it will be published in the fall of 2025. Congratulations, Iain. And also his accomplishments as program director of Manhattanville over the past year and a half. He is at his cousin's wedding today, celebrating joy. So much of Iain's poems exist in that liminal space between deep grief and hard-won hope. And in a world full of so much pain, I will give you one of Iain's purely joyous poems, Fountain of Three Rivers, from Ghosts Like a Place, which if you don't have it, please get it, Alice James Books, 2018. So I'm going to read one of Iain's poems and then two of my poems, and then I'm going to introduce my students. This poem by Iain is on page 74 of his book, for those of you who have it with you on Zoom in here. Fountain of the Three Rivers. A young boy, a toddler, rocks on the lip of the fountain in Logan Circle. His mother and father on either side. He's making a mess of an ice cream cone, strawberry, while laughing at the twists and stretches of his father's face. Jamal's in town, and we're watching the boy and also the upspray of the fountain as it rises through the view of the brownstone facade at Basilica, St. Peter's and Paul, its clear story windows set high, its vaulted copper dome oxidized to aqua green. The boy then starts laughing too hard and topples back, down toward the fountain's pool, but his mother shoots out her arms and braces him. When she pulls the boy back to sitting, he's laughing with the thrill of falling even harder than before. It's hard not to smile, this little boy, open-mouthed, shaking with laughter, his brown left cheek covered with a broad daub of red-pink ice cream. Later, at the museum, we're standing in the modern and contemporary wing, staring at a Rothko, one of the color fields, not orange, red, yellow, but similar shading on the rectangles. And Jamal says, the colors are vibrating. And I'd never liked Rothkos until then, because of course, I'd never understood them. And now I love them. And now I'll never be able to stop loving them. And that's Iain. Okay, and I'm going to read 2 short poems from my new book. My new book is called If Some God Shakes Your House, and it's about a contemporary Antigone struggling under the tight grip of a Trump administration and raising her disabled adult daughter. But these 2 poems are not the Antigone persona poems. One of them is called Memento Mori, Northern White Rhinos. They are gray, big as boulders, gentle as the grass they spend the whole day grazing. Only 2 left of their kind, mother and daughter. They live under armed guard in a Kenyan sanctuary after spending their life caged in a Czech zoo. Unaware of their doom, they pass their last days eating and napping. Each time they lower their heavy bodies down to rest, they sleep, tusks touching. Oh, love, what do any of us have of this? And the last poem I'm going to read before I introduce my 3 Manhattanville students is called Memento Mori Apple Orchard. This poem was first published in Valparaiso Review, and then Fred Marchand, Jessica Greenbaum, and Jenny Barber chose it for their anthology called Tree Lines, published by Grayson Press, which is a book of poems all about trees. And it's coming out next year in the Macmillan Bedford Introduction to Literature in the Fragile Earth section. So, Memento Mori, Apple Orchard. In the gold light of early October, we climb the orchard hills, searching empty trees for apples. The boy at the gate tells us Ida Red, Rome, Crispin, and Surprise are all ripe and ready for our hands. We walk and walk. The dog investigates every fallen apple with her frantic nose. Even as we savor this autumn sunlight of our beginning, headlines remind us of what is lost. Large families have picked the trees clean, leaving plastic bottles and paper napkins glowing like white flags. Instead of the fragrant apples on the ground, reminding me of my mother's baking, I catch the smell of decay. I catch the smell of decay as we walk through so many rows of stubby trees that we cannot find our way back to the car. We do not say what we're thinking. If we leave here without a single apple, it might mean what we have done to the earth cannot be undone. The children who grow up on this imperiled planet will not remember pulling the russet fruit from the branches to bite into its sweet flesh. We see boys throw bruised apples at each other. Still children, they already know what is damaged becomes a weapon. As we pull away, we watch them run the worn paths. Their masks fall as they bend to collect the blemished apples and fill their empty bags. And now It is my honor to introduce 3 of my students from the Manhattanville MFA class. Caitlin and Rye were in my class in the spring of 23, and Mariah was a student last year. It's always such a joy for a teacher to discover the unique voice of each student. Though each of these poets often writes about nature and family members with a tender and compassionate lens, Rye is deeply meditative and loves Mary Oliver's work. A simple walk in the woods in the rain takes on existential dimension. Regardless if they're writing a hustle to the moon or a poem about climate change, their voice is unmistakable. Caitlin often writes in tercets, and her poems about family are often set in the unmistakable Texas landscape of her youth. Her poem about the speaker's sister taking the wrong bus home will always stay with me. Mariah skillfully brings alive the Ohio farmland of the speaker's grandfather, and many of her poems grapple with the aftermath of hard events, like a parent leaving, the emotional weight of the conditioner and shampoo left behind in the shower achieved tragic dimension in Mariah's hands. I am so proud of these 3, and I am looking forward to following their poetry careers with interest. Please help me welcome Rye, Caitlin, and Mariah.
Hey, I'm Kate. I took Jennifer's poetry class in the spring of this year. Hadn't really taken a poetry class before, really. And I like being good at things right out of the gate. And I wasn't, but this is something I'm happy to not ever be that great at, because it gives me a reason to kind of keep returning to it, and I get to have it in my life in some capacity. So I guess a lot of my poems deal with a longing for or missing a place where I never felt like I belonged in the first place. Very light. This is a tanka trio. Called Then. Pecans fall from trees, red ants biting my bare feet. I pull our chickens in my little red wagon, giving them a taste of flight. After them, buildings block the sun. I learned to walk on concrete. Southern drawl now gone. I want to be more alive. Not a rusting red wagon. Now adrift. Mom says I'm too thin, and Dad asks, how is your friend? My lips only form the shape of a barefoot girl, her breeze bruising blades of grass. This one is called Chasing Raindrops in Navasota, Texas, 2001. Silver Chevy rattles down a dirt road, stubbornly shifting gears. Because I don't have my license, you let me drive anyway. Nothing to do but chase raindrops, petrichor heavy in our noses, of the same shape and size. You say, you'll grow into it one day. Pine trees unyielding and dense, brittle ground and gray sky merging, our sweat-singed eyes follow cascading streams on the windshield. Katie did. We finally found your raindrops. Brim of your cowboy hat eclipsing the hazy Texas sun, returned to scorch any gentleness. But I remember, we were friends once, before I blamed you for the worst of me. Yeah, my dad has his cowboy hat and belt buckle and boots always. And I came across a picture recently where I have his cowboy hat and boots. I'm also the spitting image of him. Life is funny. So I actually went to Manhattanville for my undergrad as well. And I was dancing quite a bit at the time and wanted to study dance and was in Texas. And I saw Manhattanville on a map and I hadn't really visited and I was like, go in there. So my first day of undergrad, I hopped off a plane and that was my first time on Manhattanville's campus.
Wow.
I think sometimes like our lizard brain knows where we're going to thrive, sort of like plants grow towards the sun. So I wound up here and came back for more. This one's called Padida. I decided I wanted to rhyme because rhyming is fun. I look over the edge of history repeating, pointed toe dipped in two worlds until my heart stops beating. History keeps repeating, brick wall bruising my temple until my heart stops beating. In my dreams, I'm finally simple. Brick wall bruising my temple, I'm a polished padida. In my dreams, I'm finally simple, barefoot with a fishing pole. In a polished padida, God reaches me, she's singing. Barefoot with a fishing pole, she's in my flat feet swinging. God reaches me, she's singing. Pointed toe dipped in two worlds, she's in my flat feet swinging. When I look over the edge. So I am one of three girls. I'm the middle of three sisters. This one is called Big Sister, Middle Sister. And I love forms because I didn't have a lot of exposure to contemporary poetry. So we did a lot of studying of forms in Jennifer's class, and that to me is like a weighted blanket still. I feel very safe in forms. So this one is a duplex. Big sister, middle sister. I yearn to be as gentle as you. Acorn eyes, freeways of freckles. I tag along your freeways of freckles. You bring me to parties I'm too young for. I'm bored at the parties I'm too young for and kiss empty-headed boys on tailgates. Done kissing empty-headed boys on tailgates. 11, still drunk at swim team practice this morning. Your aspirin and toast when I'm still drunk this morning. I just wanted to know what keeps Dad out so late. You pretend not to notice when he's out so late, but I decide I want to be a villain. Your shadow splinters away, a villain, because I'll never be as gentle as you. This is a short one. I guess what I always really loved about dance was that each performance is different, each poetry reading is different. This idea of always trying to reach the perfect penultimate moment or perfect padida. So this one's called The Haven. We dance on hardwood floors behind walls of mirrors. Smell of sweat and solace baked into the ballet bar. Beyond the glass, colors warped and blinding, chaos plucks a waltz. Temporal teeth at our heels, we injure and ache for beauty. To suffocate would be redundant. I'm gonna do, what is it, the two poem warning? Is that? I'll do my, As I mentioned, I'm the middle of three girls. This one's about my little sister, who I love very much. I'll try my best to get through it. I'm a little tender today. This one's called My Autistic Sister Decides to Take the Bus. And this is after Mark Doty's Brian, age 7. Wonderful poem. Mom drives us home from school, but today, Alana gets on the yellow bus. She tells no one of her plan, or maybe she mumbles it to her fingers, folds it into the list she keeps in wobbly crayon strokes. We ride all over town, scan silhouettes of strangers. My little sister presses her hands to the window glass, face wide to the street, round and available. Mom answers the phone call. A bewildered bus driver apologizes. He completed his route, but Alana remains. With every stop, she had insisted, no, this house is the wrong color. We exhale when she descends. That big curve of a smile reaches nearly to the rim of her face. I imagine the world she sees, brush strokes I am blind to. I love my little sister. Okay. We'll do this one to finish. This one is a forest for her loneliness. Forsythia glows golden, defying the solemn sky. She sways and wonders what it might be like to propagate, to build a forest for her loneliness. Red cardinal resting as light as someone's ghost on her limb. She wonders what it would be like to be both wild and a home. The bird ascends, its absence heavy. All right. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Mariah. Jennifer, thank you for that introduction. It's lovely. So I want to start with a poem that I wrote based off another poem. Before I ever considered myself a poet, I took a U.S. literature from 1945 to present course at Kent State University. In that class, I fell in love with the work of Gary Snyder, a beatnik poet of the 1950s. His work surrounding Zen Buddhism and his appreciation for nature spoke to me and inspired me to write about my love for Ohio, the place I'm from. So this is, I walked into the pawn shop, modeled after Gary Snyder's I Went into the Maverick Bar. I walked into the pawn shop in Alliance, Ohio, thumbed through records and CDs covered in dust, Barbra Streisand, Pink Floyd. My navy blue jacket was wrapped around my waist. I left my purse under the front seat of Dad's car. Two men whispered about rifles, leaning over, their elbows resting on the glass counter. A woman from the back said to my dad, "Do you want to hold the knife you're looking at?" The bell over the door rang as a girl with a pierced lip walked in. Her flip-flops smacked gravel over the carpeted floor. "Don't touch anything or I'll beat your ass," she said to 3 kids. They already left smudges on the front door glass. And with another ringing of the bell, an older gentleman entered in slippers. He held his dead wife's wedding ring clasped in his hands, like that time in 1997 when my father held me. I remember when Akron Children's was my home, and Dad pulled me around in a red wagon outside. Those frail bones and bladder, a body eager for a conclusion. So often I come too close to hurting myself. We left the pawn shop, beneath a blistering sun. We traversed pothole-riddled roads. From the clutch of homesickness, I come back to this body, to this fragility, to this normal living, whatever that means. So when I joined Manhattanville MFA program, I came with the certainty that without a doubt, I was a memoir and nonfiction writer. And, years later, this is still true. My life and my experiences are still being written, but now I feel as though I'm finding an internal truth more and more through poetry. 588 West Georgia Avenue. My father never learned to buy shampoo. We lived on Georgia Avenue, before puberty, before mom moved out, before a first kiss and a finished basement. My father didn't bring home slices of Land Lake American cheese or Pantene. After mom left, he started showing up at dinner. 4 Big Macs, 3 root beers, a Lipton tea bottle full of cigarette butts. The last of my mother ran, took the list of what my dad should remember. Strawberries and cream, VO5 shampoo, and my first box of tampons. So this next poem, I don't always write about my life. So this poem is an example of that. And this one is called Big Trouble Comes Small, and it's written about the murder of Kaylee Marie Anthony. So the epigraph is, on December 11, 2008, Kaylee Marie Anthony's 2-year-old body was found shoved in a laundry bag in a wooded area. What remained of a t-shirt she was last seen wearing were the words, "Big trouble comes small." You were in the back seat of your mother's mind when your grandmother said, "It smells like there's been a dead body in the damn car." It took not 1, not 2, but 3 reports for them to take your body seriously. And what was left of you, you ask? Those bangs that all little girls have at your age, now turned into yellowed strands that could be mistaken for cobwebs. The letters of a pink t-shirt you wore in a photo with your mother seemed to resist the earth the longest. Big trouble comes small. And maybe big trouble comes in small caskets, because nothing, not even neck breaking and how to make chloroform Google searches can hold someone accountable. So these last few poems that I'm going to read are ones that I've written in the last couple of months. Through homesickness, these poems clawed their way out of me, and it's been begging to be written. So these poems are only the start to my poetry thesis for my MFA. And it's one about Ohio, about my grandfather, his dairy farm. It's, to me, a thesis about home. Parkinson's is a cycle, where muscles deteriorate and grandfathers fall, chest first, onto their life alert pendant. Funny how the damn thing didn't go off, how no one knew until my uncle found him on the kitchen floor. Years before, my grandfather would have fallen before, off the tractor, off into the gutter, the barn, the cow shit. This was when he used his body at his own discretion. Now he shakes when he walks, the tops of his toes brushing the carpet as he tries to lift his foot. Simple steps, 1 foot in front of the other, not like a newborn calf walking sideways. That comparison would be too easy. No, like a man that refuses to say, this is too damn hard. I don't want to see him shake, but I don't want to see the day when he stops. And there is no need for the useless life alert he still wears around his neck. A good, clean life. Well, it was like a dream. That's what my grandfather said from his hospital bed, positioned beneath a plaque on the wall. You live a good, clean life and God rewards you. He doesn't believe in God, says it's all a load of shit. As a kid, he watched from beneath a bar counter as his father drank himself to death. Today, my grandfather would swear that his atheism is not out of spite, that it's not a "you're dead to me" crisis of faith, more like a "I don't buy it" kind of doubt. Because where was God when his father died on the operating table? Where was God when my grandfather moved from beneath the bar up to his father's seat? And where was God when my grandfather fell from his kitchen stool and lay there in his piss for 14 hours? He says the 14 hours were dreamlike. Is that supposed to make us feel better? When the nurse comes in, he asked her for a beer. And I love my grandma. I will now read my final poem for the evening. Feels right to wrap it up with this poem. It's called Home. A walk in Ohio air with your mother down North Benton West Road leads you to a fragment of your missing uncle, grizzly long-cut wintergreen, the tobacco he packed between his lips and gums. The empty tin rests in the ditch with crushed Pabst cans and cattails. Your uncle was drinking a 12-pack a day in high school, is what you were always told about him, stealing his father's beer from the mini fridge, chugging it before he hopped on a tractor, in a truck, on a gateway. Mother points to the can and says, I bet any money that your uncle threw that. And you think that even if you could ask him, it'd be impossible for him to tell you, impossible for him to remember something as indifferent as a can when he did not recognize his own father after sneaking off from helping him cut firewood, taking a bump, then returning to his father and saying, who the fuck are you? No, your missing uncle could not tell you if you threw that can. But he could tell you which way is home. He is always returning with a new beat-to-shit car, the same cow shit-covered jeans, and promises that he will not pay you back. If he knows anything, it's how to get back to that farmhouse on North Benton West Road, where you walk next to your mother with your place back home still sticking to your skin, because you belong there. No matter how far you run, you belong there. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Jennifer, thank you for the lovely introduction. I'm going to read a couple of the ones that you mentioned. I'm going to start with a poem about an orchard, Golden Delicious. An apple seed sprouts inside my stomach, rapidly amassing white roots that absorb my gastric acid, which stretch against my gut and push into my intestines, while green growth springs quickly up my esophagus, branching through my thorax and filling my lungs with leaves, bark growing thick up my throat, until from my mouth, a bundle of buds unfolded to pink flowers. Burlap what used to be my body, then plant me in the backyard. In autumn, I'll offer you a bounty of beautiful bile yellow apples. This one is called Floribunda Baby. It's for my father. My father grew a row of red roses behind the house where we used to live. He'd carry me down the long green lawn, picking soft petals, which I'd hold tight in my tiny hands. He'd take me inside for my afternoon nap, still holding the petals until sleep unfurled the clutch of my fists, revealing pink palms and the wilted remains of a child's love. This next one is called Just After Dark. The three of us decided to walk out to Sunset Lake, the moonster yellow moon staying close behind us. We headed for the wood trail behind the reservoir, where the green lake drained clear into a thin and shallow brook. Walking quietly, we listened to ensure that we were alone before stopping for a smoke just past the third trail marker. Sitting back to back on a rock, we breathed out curls of smoke, enjoying each other's company and the sounds of July night. This one is called Shark. Woke up from surgery, newly cut hair, stinging from the knife's cruel kiss. Spent the day sleeping, convalescing beside you, between doses of codeine. Beneath my bloody binder, purple, yellow-green flesh was sewn together at seams, coated in syrupy surgical glue. That night, I sat in bed awake as my incision slowly deheased, but I let you sleep while I wept, pink fluid onto our bedding. This is a short one. It's called the All You Can Eat Seafood Special. Every day, hell is getting hotter, and there's nothing for me to do but stay in the slowly warming water until I am dead, oiled and tender, ready for the world to crack open and devour, dipped in butter. This next one is the Hazel for Chang'e, who is the moon goddess figure in Chinese mythology. Many millennia ago, I landed on the lonely moon, and since then I have been alone, your only moon. Through the years, I have waxed and waned patiently, moving slowly against starry skies, your lovely moon. Each year's 8th moon cycle, you celebrate festively the fullness of the mid-autumn moon, your pearly moon. When next you see me shining in the sky brightly, I hope you'll say hello to me, Chang'e, your lonely moon. And the final poem I have for you today is a pantoum called Melancholy. The weeks of blue and red blurred purple like a bruise. I wipe the tears I've shed, an ocean blend of hues. Blurred purple like a bruise with undertones of green. An ocean blend of hues inside the painted scene. With undertones of green like smoky summer days. Inside the painted scene, I can't see through the haze. Like smoky summer days lie next to me in bed. I can't see through the haze. There's nothing in my head. Lie next to me in bed to wipe the tears I've shed. There's nothing in my head but weeks of blue and red. Thank you.
Say something good. Can you just say thank you, Manhattanville? Thank you. Okay, CCNY. Michelle Valadares and David Groff are mentors for the students Liddy, Samantha, and James. Michelle is our director of our CCNY MFA program, a poet and filmmaker. David Groff is a longtime visiting professor, poet, and editor with a new book called Live in Suspense, or is it Live in Suspense?
Yes.
Yes, that's so good. Okay. They're going to tell you a little bit more about each other and about their students. And I'll only add, you're in very good hands.
Thank you, Jennifer, for inviting us, and on behalf of all of us at CCNY, and thank you all for coming out. So we're going to mix it up. I'm going to introduce David Groff, and then we'll have the 3 students read, and then I'll read at the end. So we are so delighted that David has been a part of the City College poetry program, longer actually than I've been there. Today, we're really happy. His 3rd book of poems, Live in Suspense, was published in 2023 from Trio House Press. He has previously published Play, which was the winner of the Louise Bogan Award, and Theory of Devolution, which was selected for the National Poetry Series and was a finalist for the Lambda Literary and Publishing Triangle Awards. Woo! He is an accomplished independent editor and a longtime guest professor in the MFA program. And I think your books are going to be on sale after the reading. David, we're delighted.
Thank you. It was great to be here in this kind of movie set of a poetry reading space. I feel it's like we're all out of central casting somehow. Jennifer, thank you for bringing us all here in this great space, which I've seen previously only through the Zoom that is now directly in front of me in this strange way. It's wonderful to be here, have Esther be our person of ceremonies, and terrific to hear the emerging poets from Manhattanville and also from City College. It's been a joy to work in this program and to see so many poets articulating so clearly their own voices, their own distinctiveness, and I'm really, really grateful for that. I'm going to read 3 poems today, and maybe we'll give a little bit of sense of this book, Live in Suspense, or Live in Suspense. The idea that one is between things, always kind of being in a state of not knowing what happens next, whether that's really about life or beyond life, and waiting for the next mortal thing to happen. This first poem is the book. One thing you do when you put a book together, and I think MFA theses folks realize this as well, you suddenly realize all the things that obsess you that you didn't know about. And for me, it was bugs. I suddenly got a book full of bugs, and I didn't quite know how that happened. And, I'm, more of a bug person, more buggy than I thought I was. And this poem is called Desert Stink Beetle. You who gave your wings for more water, evolving to adhere them to your thorax until you become a shiny black capsule, a desert death reaper, a hearse of a bug, nosing the dirt as if you hunt your glasses, your butt to the sky like a high rider, comically somber, somberly comic, your exhaust, your line of defense, the 20-inch ray of spray you emit to get the last word, a stink you survive that lets you survive. My darkling, my thick drop of unmooned night, let me persist as your species, submit my wings to my torso, commit myself to ground, make my diet detritus and shit, evolve to be unlovely, a black ruby of gloom, a fecal American scarab, behind my earth-ridden face, my breath all bad, my ass in the air, my moon, ready to let it out, ready to take it in. A friend of mine some years ago, well, someone I knew in college and got close to again, became part of this book through a request that I'll mention in a second. And he asked me to pray for the soul of his dead brother. His brother had just died. And I didn't know what this meant to do for me. And it became one of a series of poems in this book called A Boy's Own Jesus, a boy's own Bible story. And this is A Boy's Own Heaven. And the epigraph for it, or the reading line is, a friend asked me to pray for the soul of his dead brother. For you, I go back to my boyhood dead, said by my dad to hover above us, out of body, but a flight in time, pendant, weightless and waiting, like bees that shiver against the nectar until God raises their corpses to see their souls. Such a tense suspension for a boy to hold. Dad didn't talk heaven much, as if it was a prison we shouldn't visit, as if suggesting it would bring it on, like the black cat crossing or graveyard whistling, like cloudbursts or raw luck, like coins disappearing in a drain. The cheery, not right now, right place, belied by the crying widow, by you, my friend, whose brother now in my grown life is terribly gone. You who expect a resurrection that for me in my avoided ignorance is now or never or then, the dead bro sleeping or dead or looking down on us in joy or in the waiting room with a tattered time to be roused awake for judgment. He who needs a prayer like a dollar dropped in the street or else is compost. I cannot choose to choose. I asked and asked what prayer, what help we too could give to a God who, if he is, does what he deigns, it seems, without our asks, who grabs the wheel and blows through every intersection. But for you, my brotherless friend, you who have a God who lives in a lattice of a greater web you think we humans can tug to make it glisten like an angel's feather and summon a net you think we quiver into, your brothers at salvation filigree, I pray to a dad and dud of a God who may be diagnosably indifferent. No matter my own dad, whose form has split from its cell of soul, if soul is the word, but like you says, pray. God of possible gossamer, please let all of us brothers entangle ourselves in embrace. I spend a lot of time, I live in New York City, I spend a lot of time on the street, watching people, staring at them, wondering what their lives are like, and how I could interact with them. And this poem arises out of a local street corner, and at that time of day when kids are moving to school, and that fascinates me. The title of this poem is I with No Rights in This Matter, which is a line, second to last line in a poem by Theodore Rathke that you may know, called Elegy for Jane, my student, thrown by a horse.
Oh, yeah.
I with no rights in this matter. All day I have been looking for my children, who I know will never exist. I do not find them in the forms of my students, though I would pluck them out of traffic as if my genes were speaking. Nor are my children my nieces and nephews, whose blood bears resemblances to my own, in whom I echo. They have parents to belong to, and I borrow them. Tangled amid the toddlers and strollers, the elementary kids skipping beside their dads to school, the 10-year-olds walking boldly alone past the chanting man and the compost bin, the sullen or screeching teens, all angry angles, their parents, practiced men and women who once as babies might have sat on my lap and now run enterprises. I am where among them? My non-procreation seemed the condition of my freedom. I, who swept from man to man, who lived like a boy, who felt like no one's father, not even his own, who in the prime of his sperm suspected his semen was deadly, who saw men of a generation give birth to death, his ejaculation's dead ends, ciphers of surges and love, who can't run fast enough to catch the fading train. Still, I feel in the fork of my genes those millions I produce even now, however warped and bent, clamoring to make half the child I will not make, striving inside me as I try to bear the mostly straight world stranger children, offspring owned by no one really, amazing in their incipient decay, stray as leaves and already scattering, running to the risk of the intersection. All of them, my letters to God on the street. I let them go ahead of me. Thank you.
So I'll read the short bios for the three, for the first two, and then David will read five for the third MFA students. So we have a wonderful poetry program, and we have wonderful poets, and David and I have had the pleasure of working with all three that are going to read today. The first one will be Samantha Hernandez, who lives in Brooklyn and is an MFA student at the City College of New York. Her work aims to locate the intersection of the surreal with the mundane. Her poetry can be found in Taco Bell Quarterly. Look that up, Sam. The Marble Side and the Promethean, which is our City College journal. And Sam is also the lead on coordinating and curating the MFA reading series at City College. Samantha.
Thank you so much, Michelle and David, for that wonderful introduction. I wanted to get started with a poem that's actually kind of old, but it's based on a guided meditation, and I thought it would be a good way to kind of like relax into a reading. And it's a guided meditation for pretty much anyone who isn't human. I originally called it Sharing a Room with a Spider. Close your eyes, all of them, from the eyes on the top of your head to the eyes on the bottom of your hooves. Pay attention to any sounds you might hear, the traffic, the birds outside, the buzz of the sun, the hum of the moon, the chorus of chirps from the stars, the low rumble of the surrounding gravitational fields. Become as still as possible, but don't smooth out your curling muscles, the gentle flutter of your gills as they open and close slowly. Draw yourself inward. Let each chamber of your alveoli sacs fill and empty until all four have deflated and you begin to descend into a comfortable free fall. Encase yourself tightly in your chrysalis and slowly allow your body to become a hot, blended soup, even though your body has never been soup. This process is not scary or violent. It feels familiar, and in time, all your parts incorporate back together as if they've always been that way, as you were before you were hatched. Feel your new thorax with wide wings form as the new body takes shape. You realize these parts no longer belong to you. You feel fond as you watch them fly away. Where you are now is nowhere. Consider the internal mirror that allows you to map the outline of your being in space without sight or touch. Feel the hinge of your tectonic plate shift and crack like knees deep down a staircase. You rumble and settle. Consider that it is possible to be firm and cool on top and roiling hot deep in your core. Consider you don't have to be soft. You can be molten and unbearable. You are many layers, individual and together, sediment at once, each as real as the one above and below it. Allow yourself to feel alone as you spin slowly. Become aware of all the hot and cold celestial bodies distant and close to you. Feel yourself moving towards them and pulling away at the same time as they reach toward you and as we all share the void. So I wanted to read a puzzle, and we've already heard some, and for a long time, I've been kind of obsessed with the concept of like oceanic gyres. There was this exhibit at the Whitney in 2019 by Ellie Gaw, where it was a video about oceanic gyres and a bunch of the kind of the objects that they take in. And it's just such a fascinating intersection of like the way that natural things interact with the unnatural things that we put into them. This is called Trash Guzzle. All my trash fills with trash. A plastic bag stuffs with plastic bags under the sink, ready for more trash. Birds pick even the most careful left for the right bin sorted trash. The phantom jelly, too big and soft to surface, has maybe seen my trash. The sadness of a 15-minute grocery Caesar eaten standing from the clamshell trash. What held my water floats on water 400 more years as trash. My neighbor finger combs the apartment's bins and collects a meager economy from trash. Is this what forever feels like? Abandoned vampire floating for centuries trash. Is this ego death? The customer, furious his sugarcane straw breaks, throws it in the trash. Is it lonely floating far from home? Is there comfort in the arms of trash? Hauled from the seat and cut open, our bellies spill last meal trash. I'm tired, sweet dryer. Let me wade my body's plastics in your pull, and we can float together, trash in trash. This one's called Bluebeard. I feel like Bluebeard is something that ever since I learned about the myth has come up over and over again in terms of like storytelling. Everyone's constantly retelling the Bluebeard myth, and this is a version of it. I've got this dream Bluebeard finds me in CVS because we're buying the same vitamins. I'm so hungry he makes a diner emerge, but we can't order because his hands are replacing my clothes. My yes thuds from the back of the tub. I have to wait with thin steak, blackberries, and cherry almond chocolate bait. I have to make sure there's no one to watch the feeling crawl back to slurp the crown of juices from the saucer. This one's called Purple. A Google search for when the lilacs bloom delivers stages of a bruise. whose colors change overnight so as not to get too sensitized. Each hit diminishes, unsuspecting pleasure, unsustainable joy, like Eliot's out-of-control hyacinth girl. The seasons like tripwires for grieving the lakeside's night post-bloom, when the buzzed flakes make patterns in the path for a chattering bike frame. Does purple always smell that way? Like spit raisins, velvet algae, my body made of fingers grasps for the water's cans gloved in blue and black. And I'm gonna do two more. And I really just wrote this poem because of an anagram that I came across, and I thought it was too good to not use in something. It's called Tender. The neat ender does whatever nuns her tender heart, offers her pablum by handfuls to mouths she would never touch. No amount of skin shedding changes the fact that warm poet is an anagram for tapeworm. At the end of my red rented Eden, I'm a snake. I have no shell, I have no reach, and past my few teeth, white droplets from a rubber tree portend the end of wild civilization. And so I started with something relaxing. I'm gonna end with a rage poem with a title that nobody will like. It's called I Don't Like Your Dog. It's not. I don't like your dog. His mouth fits fists so tight their palms grow gold veins. I don't like your dog. His drool pisses down pipes all the way to Tartarus. I don't like your dog. His bark digs pits, lit eyeball white. I don't like your dog. He bites what's in reach, but does not eat. I don't like your dog. His name is the color of dark furry water. With the same clang the links were made, all day he exhausts his chain as he begs me, if you set me free, I will destroy you. So set me free. Thank you.
Thank you. We're talking about my dogs. So the next poet wrote a very short line, so I'm going to read it, but for his bio. But I'm also going to tell you a story about it. James Grammer is a poet, an adjunct professor, and sumo wrestler who lives in Queens, New York. He has a background in social work and teaching writing. So James is a graduate of our program. He graduated last semester, but a couple semesters before that, he was almost done with the program, and he took a poetry class with me, a poetry workshop. And somewhere like in the middle of the semester, I met him in the hallway and I said, James, you do know you're a poet. And he looked at me like askance, like couldn't believe it, never been told that. I think it might have been the first poetry class you took at City. And I convinced him to stay for a couple more semesters, and he finished a really amazing poetry class. James.
Thank you, Michelle and David, for encouraging me to do poetry. Love you guys. Okay. Can you hear me?
It's not.
So
Talk as loud as you want.
got it. The first poem is called Fat, which a couple of you may have heard before. And it is a poem about being fat. I spill over the side of my bowl, defy the bottom of a shirt hem. Belt dragged down, police a rim of exposed flesh. Problematic, door lintels, subway gates, seats on airplanes, eschew non-athletic clothing. Full of nimble, fiery, and delectable shapes, a good Sheris sack, Orson Welles on Dean Martin slurring into his false beard. A vast belly that he kept concealed behind roomy trousers and well-cut double-breasted suits, thighs rubbed Body by Charles Mingus. Red, raw, fluid collects in the cell of Betheus. Ankles, feet, late stage Brando. Veins, legs swollen, Sancho Panza, Mama Cass. Ho, cries Tashtigo, and the whaleboats descend from the Pantene, oars like toothpicks dipped into waves, slickened by the widening ribbon of semi-congealed spermaceti emanating from the unimpressive corpse of the flaccid Leviathan. About mates, about we, cries fierce and affable Stub over his extinguished briar. Row ye whoreson curs, ye less than dogs, ye sons of pagans. On and on the Lilliputian dolphin butchers row as on he cusses them, driving them towards the bloated corpse which they carved like a vast Roquefort, butterflying the soft, blue-veined flesh thereof with priapic instruments. Months, nay, years after, the tallow will burn on dinner tables and on bookcases, illumining the scripture study of parsons and lettered goodwives, or mayhaps in aperture-choked dabbies wanly reveal the drunken tribulations of sailors and sour folk dicing in fishy back alleys in little old New England, watched by disgorging foliate heads from chapel corbels and misericords of churches. Look at my breasts like twin pale windmills rising from the bathtub, the island of my stomach, the corpse of a white porpoise. And I got one more that's kind of long too. It's about my father, who passed away in 2018. It's called Things Are Going to Unfold Like Soil. It's broken into parts. Part one is called Death is a Sexy Mantle. As a child, I used to think about eternity, and I felt a paralyzing, funny feeling like an electrical current in my torso, and I did not like the idea of being a permanent fixture in a heavenly choir. I remember that a strange series of images would pop into my head, a vast underground space filled with pillars of purple, blue, porous stone, thick as baobab trees, that tapered to a meager 6 inches where they enjoined floor and ceiling, and if you tried to move them, they could wiggle a bit, which produced a feeling in the genitals. The feeling of infinitude was like a repeated waking dream. Part two, Small Bones. I pulled up behind the hearse wearing my mother's sunglasses. She couldn't drive her shiny blue Buick to the Italian restaurant. I had red wine. You bought me oversized Lego sets at random, and we weren't there for each other. I sat with my cousins while we ate the big salad. It was the last time. Part three, I'm basically made of wood rot. Sitting in the office on Fifth Avenue with Rachel on snow-falling winter's day, I answer my broken iPhone on speaker, since that's the only way it works. Haggle with the god of death over your few remaining minutes and give the okay to pull the plug. Rather let him rest in peace. Imagine being awakened from blissful sedation to be told you're going to die, and this is the last time you will see your family. We voted on it. Part four, All I Know Is Time. When I visit you before you go to the ICU, I come bearing a manila folder full of physics tests from the university, which you insist on grading. I shave your face with an electric razor for the first and only time. I have never seen you with whiskers. They're short and white like cat hairs. This is the most intimate moment we share between us in our entire lives. Part five, Relinquish. Clay pigeons at Fort Dix with the snipers, where I learned to shoot a muzzle loader for the hunting exam. You can hear the dull thuds of our artillery from our living room. It is also where the Hindenburg Zeppelin crashes in 1937. We eat scrapple, corned beef hash from cans in oil grease diners on the edge of the Hasidic neighborhood, 10 cups of coffee in those white ceramic mugs with black flecks on them, potted meat and Vienna sausages. Shit on a shingle, catch crabs with chicken necks on strings to boil, white rice with butter and salt. Hot dogs with jars of cooked onions and sugared tomato juice, Steve and Ed's original hot dog chili sauce in the blue and yellow cans. I do not know who Steve and Ed are, but to me they are saints held in the highest esteem. Chicken fried steak. Part 6, it's called gut knives. That's the final part. Breakfast pizza covered in eggs at 6 a.m. Bistro by the sea, open early to serve the fisher folk of Shark River. We used to go there after you'd work on the boat engine. I'd be down the other side of the docks catching transparent shrimp with my bare hands or watching the old women fillet eels. We used to sell the bluefish. We bake them in tomato sauce, cook them a really long time to make it palatable. We keep the flukes ourselves, fry them in butter. When the lines cross and are sucked under the boat, you rest them back. You show me how to remove fish hook from finger. We toss sea robins back to the sea. I trade one to my neighbor for a beer. He puts them in his cooler to take home. We have never seen anyone keep these fish. 6 spider legs underneath their chins, pectoral fin bones that slip their membranes. We have a cherry shovel. Raw squid juice on fingers gives Coronas a metallic tang. Fish gasp in coolers of Diet Coke and ice. Flies dither about a record thresher tail hanging from a hook at the end of the wharves, tall as a child, curing in the sun, taking on the rot, salt, dry, wet wormwood texture of things left by the sea. Thank you.
Thank you, James and Sam. This next poet I knew first as I knew Sam as well on screens back in those days when we were all Zooming. And I admired from the beginning her passion for all creatures of every size and place in our universe, and her desire to do justice to those creatures, even the ones that the world might squeal away from or shrug off. And I appreciate that. But appreciate also the range of emotions in her poems, including the possibility of anger, which is often something we don't see in poetry. It seems a little not something we admit. Nidhi Gandhi is a writer, rhetorician, and her last semester in the MFA Creative Writing Program in the City College of New York. Her poetry has been featured in Up the Staircase Quarterly, and both 433 and Honey Guide Literary Magazine. Her nonfiction is upcoming in Sultry and Lyre and Heavy Feather Review. A Poets Afloat resident, Nidhi is also the co-founder and editor-in-chief of The Marbled Sigh, a poetry journal for emerging writers, by emerging writers for emerging writers. Please welcome Nidhi.
Well, I just want to say thank you to Michelle, and thank you to David, and thank you to Esta and Jennifer, and thank you to all the poets who came out to read and all the people that showed up to support us, even those people on Zoom who have, you know, chosen not to show their faces. That's totally okay. So one of the poems that I'm going to be reading today, I wrote when I was on my flight towards going to AWP this semester. I was sitting next to someone who fell asleep and was actively passing gas, and it was just super awkward. But nonetheless, I looked out the window and I saw like the fuel, like the dark smoke coming out of the engine of the plane. So this is what I wrote. On my way to AWP, I started to think about woolly mammoths. You ran amid soft tufts of snow, your tusks gliding through peaks, perfectly at peace, unaware of your imminent demise. I'm on a plane to Seattle right now, the United Airlines aircraft flying over the snow-cloaked Cascades. Soon we'll be flying over cities, steel replacing wilderness, nature Ozymandian. These mountains were there before me. They've seen births and deaths for hundreds of thousands of years, survived the shift of tectonic plates from Pangaea to North America. They've seen your demise, woolly mammoth. Animals and plants now dead bring life to others, nourish ecosystems around us. What are we? We're selfish even in death, afraid to be eaten by animals, perfectly embalmed in our coffins, a transaction of grief and death. Someone can tell me that undertakers provide a service, restore bodies to perfection, sewing bullet holes, man's work. We love to conquer, planting our flags on the moon, inserting lead into bodies, playing God. But at the end, nature wins, as we all will die. These snow-covered mountains have survived every single death. But I do wonder that by evolving humans, did nature fight itself, or did it suicide? This next poem is an after poem that I had written in Michelle's wonderful class, The Conversation Between Art and Poetry. It's called An Ocean, after Blue Chore Coat by Dave Filippo. I've learned to love turning a bar of soap in my hands, feel the ridges of the brand's name in the center as I lather my limbs, rinse with a little pail inside the tub. I have learned to love the heat swelter, the coos of pigeons as they sit on my kitchen cabinets in the afternoon, unafraid as they walk around, but never flee until flight is forced by chewing hands in a broom. I have learned to love the flutter of moths at night as they rise and rest on fluorescent light beams, and the sweet cold numb sensation of pistachio ice cream served fresh on a leaf. I have learned to love the cow who concedes to farmers to milk it to produce cheese and custard. And I have learned to pray for forgiveness on behalf of farmers who remain unaffected by the screams of cattle when they electrocute. Let machine blades rip the calves open, bleeding an ocean on the floor. This next poem, I was inspired by, I was in a class called, it was a Caribbean literature class, and we were reading a book called Boat People by Maria Santos Febres. And one of the comments that a lot of us said was, I said this in class, of like, I wonder what it would have been like to be given a persona poem based on this experience. And the writer was writing about boat people who were actually African slaves who were thrown like overboard from the ships because they, were either unruly or because they, passed away. So this is called Death Flute. We no longer whole, bitten, chewed off. Crabs, small fish gathered to feast on nipples, thighs, cheeks, eyes, unable to scream because the sea swallowed us. As we drifted, sunk to the bottom, as kelp and coral coiled around our rotted skin, as schools of fish pass through our nostrils, as the tide comes in, comes out, cools sand-covered warm legs, as a crane swoops, glides, dips, ballets into the ocean, as jellyfish swim to surface. Shh. You can hear the pop, 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 bubbles of breathlessness, music reverberating from our body holes. This next poem I wrote in David's class. We were sort of given this assignment where we all had to pick a word that was a verb and a noun. And this was like my first semester, and I was genuinely considering dropping out. I was like, I have no talent, I can't do this. I can't not like, and I was literally like, I remember like falling asleep and then waking up at 11 o'clock, and the poem was technically due at 11:59, and well, I ended up giving it in at like 12:40 or something. So, and I remember going down this really weird rabbit hole about scorpions. Like, I watch a lot of nature stuff. I enjoy bugs. It's fine. So I ended up like, there was this species of scorpion that was actually, the Latin name was translated to call the man killer. And I assumed that it actually meant the man eater. So I don't know, and then I found out a year later after going down the same rabbit hole again that it was actually called man killer, but I liked man eater, so I just kept it. But you know, and this was the first time that I actually experimented with form and stuff, so I was really you know, I was like, okay, maybe I can survive this thing called the MFA program. So this is called a man eater. Moonlight beamed against its coal-colored skin as it danced, fluorescing bright blue in the Arabian night. You could hear the echoes of crinkled corpses left caked out in the sand. The exoskeleton as hard as a hammer, harnessing its toxin and the telsin at the tip of the tail, sharp, ready to strike, ready to breach your caramel candy-colored smooth skin, ready to act, ready to inject you with chlorotoxins, skilatoxins, agitoxins, cherubdotoxins, ready to make you paralyzed in an instant, blood curdle as you wrinkle from the inside out, shell turning into jelly, turning into sludge. Will you dare to knock on my door, delight in my sting, dilate your eyes for my venom? Will you dare to trip, tremble, and drool on my acidic bulb? Shall I reach forth and grab on with my pinchers and show you what I have in store in my body? Careful now, I have no taste for violence, only lunch. Okay. This is a poem that I wrote this semester for my thesis. It's called Apex Predator, and it's sort of based on this idea of reincarnation. So like my mom kind of always tells me that when you're born, like before you're born, you kind of sign this contract with God saying you'll agree to go through like X, Y, and Z things in order to live your life and whatever. And I'm just like, oh my God, I did not choose any of this, okay? But nonetheless, and my father can be he's a complicated human being, and he kind of says that he's going to turn into a lion or an alligator or something once he dies. So he feels like it's kind of his excuse to become, you know, like a mean person. So you know, so this is called Apex Predator. Nictitating eye at peace, an alligator. In his next life, my father knows he'll be an alligator. When I heard fire truck sirens, I hid behind the curtains. My dad, don't worry, I'll feed them to the alligators. I waited on the balcony, listened for the elevator. Dad threw the fire trucks to the alligators. Now the world was so much safer. Father twisted mom's arm, house filled with tobacco fumes. A bully in school said I ruined everything. I hated school, but home was also danger. Disassociation station, I crave toast, I crave blood. Sometimes I'm Annie, sometimes I'm Darth Vader. Suicide attempt at 21. I go to therapy, I'm so much calmer. During a fight, I screamed, I did it because of you. Do what you want, said father. In his next life, my father knows he'll be an alligator. 7% of hatchlings are cannibalized. Father, you're already an alligator. And this last poem I'm gonna read is called Guzzle for the Ocean. I wrote it in Michelle's prosody class, and she had this, like, she calls it the method to her madness, which is completely correct. So she makes you follow the form like exactly the way it's supposed to be. And we're supposed to like write another poem because I didn't do the guzzle correctly or whatever. So that so then I have to do, and I didn't do the poem. So I was kind of just sitting there, and I ended up writing like 5 drafts of the same poem. And then during the end of the class, I submitted it, and I was like, here, Michelle, I wrote the poem. So this is called Guzzle for the Ocean. And I actually dedicated it to Michelle. So Guzzle for the Ocean. My hot feet covered in sand, I dipped into the ocean. To get salt, my grandmother in India boiled water from the ocean. My first time at Jones Beach, I gathered seashells, clam, and glass. I also picked a dead crab, grayish pink, cast away from the ocean. Sea salt, minerals, and aloe, ingredients in a Sephora potion lotion. If I had money, I'd drink non-alcoholic Kahlua and eat vegan scallops on vacation by the ocean. Old white dudes cried when Ariel was recast as a Black woman. Relax, chill. She's still a redheaded mermaid in the ocean. I used to drown in a complex PTSD depression ocean. I, Nitty, just graduated from therapy. Look at me, I'm swimming in the ocean. Thank you.
Thank you, Nidhi. I think you are not the only person who wants to or has wanted to or has already dedicated a poem to Michelle Valadares. I know I want to. She's a much beloved presence for all of us and a great leader. Michelle Valadares is a poet, essayist, and independent film producer. She is the director of the MFA program at the City College of New York, and an assistant professor in English. She is the author of Nortada, The North Wind, and several chapbooks. Her poems have been nominated for Pushcart Prize, and she has been included in Language for a New Culture, Contemporary Poetry from the Middle East and Asia and Beyond from Norton Books, as well as other anthologies. She lives in Brooklyn with her partner and her beloved Portuguese Podengo Pequeno Terrier.
So thanks for your good energy. This is the last poem. So thanks for keeping up your attention if you haven't fallen asleep. It's very difficult to follow Nidhi, and I don't want to end up as a whale or an alligator in a poem. Next poem. But I'm very honored by the dedication. So it is interesting to follow Nidhi because I think we have very similar themes, and there's a lot of water and animals in these poems. These are poems for a new collection, and the first one is called Mangroves. The stench, thick muck, loamy and fertile from mangrove trees in Bandra wafts through the mist of childhood. The salt coated our arms, legs, and dreams, wading barefoot past the mangroves. The fishermen cast their nets in the early dawn. The fisherwoman on St. Thomas Road sold pomfret, shrimp, and Bombay duck, gutted, skinned, deboned or whole. They squatted behind large baskets, saris tied up lungi style, bargained with crude jokes. Silver knives flashed to scale and fillet the catch, transformed by a grandmother or cook into the evening curry, leaves crushed with masalas into thick paste mixed with coconut milk. No market in the West smells the same. Mangroves stabilize storm surges, prevents erosion by waves and tides, attracts fish to food and shelter. We migrate to cleaner smells. Forfeit the coastal forests, dense tangle of roots and shrubs as the seas around us rise. This one I'm so happy that there's so many puzzles being read, and so here's another one. It happens to be my favorite form, so that's why I made her rewrite it. Saturday morning, more rain, all year in the desert, no rain. No more umbrellas, feel the drops on my face, walk the dog, welcome the rain. In parts of our world, bombs and bullets fall like rain. We are queried, tracked, and taxed. Our debts paid off, all cash is rain. Newts, frogs, shell mushrooms, moss, lichen, a mast of acorns fall like the rain. The Four Noble Truths is my holy grail. When I practice, blessings flow like rain. For years as a child, I disliked the rain. Yasmin, born in the tropics, now prays for rain. This is called Swimming with Sharks. It's very new, so if I stumble. It was a long train ride out here and a subway ride from Brooklyn, which is a disaster because you have a lot of time to rewrite the poem, which I did. So now I'm like, oh my God, I don't know if I should read it anymore. It's called Swimming with Sharks. All summer, I drive to Rockaway Beach to swim with friends beyond the jetties to open water, a nautical mile. I wear fins to keep up with the swimmers twice as fast and stronger. I shiver from the cold and the thresher, sand, and great whites that fill the news. We swim with sharks. I heal from broken bones, torn ligaments. The ocean brings me back to 8, when my father walked my brother and I down the block for daily swims in the Arabian Gulf after school. We dove off a man-made pier, tethered to an inner tube and my father's broad brown shoulders. I swam before I could walk. I learned to swim with sharks. Though I fear the sea, it is also home and freedom. To the part of consciousness which no longer fights gravity, old injuries disappear. I am salt and buoyant, swimming with sharks. We see whales and dolphins on the horizon, bluefish and fresher sharks off the rocks, up and down the East Coast. Shark bites are reported. In July, a shark bites a woman in Rockaway in shallow waters at dusk. I resolve never to swim again in the open ocean until my brother calls. He says, chances are that you're more likely to be hit by a car than bitten by sharks. I think about the academy, my job, my family's multiple migrations, Far East to the Middle East to the West. In 1976, a boy in my school asked why there were no Black and brown students while I sat 2 seats behind him, invisible. I think about outsiders, immigrants, and outliers. I think how study, school, and work were the answers to what I feared most, being outcast, bitten in a world filled with sharks. In my ancestral home, the ocean, there is suffering. There are sharks. Between the sharks and me lie waves of karma. My day to die will arrive soon. To my brother, I say, anything happens, tell the family I was at home in the sea, doing what I loved best, swimming with sharks. Thank you. That was hard to read all my edits, but I think they're better, the edits. Offline, I'm gonna read 2 more. Offline, a new word to add to the lexicon of modernity. I shut my laptop and toss the phone underneath a pillow. With a pen and a green notebook, I write by hand. Out of practice, I will struggle to read the words later. Offline solitude, no distractions, the thoughts on our mind, a lost memory, a strange feeling materializes. The wars are forgotten, the neighborhood crimes disappear, the political theater quiets down. I hear the music of the pipes rattling on a January morning, and the black squirrels outside the window scamper up and down the fire escape. Marianne, my cousin, called last night. Let go of everything material, she screams. Our parents sacrificed so much for us. I am allergic to eggs, fish, and citrus, but not lemons, tiny clementines, and tangerines. In my dream, I was on a porch over a lake, dividing into blue and red piles letters or chips from a childhood game. I sang as I walked the dog, trying to match the songs of the sparrow and warbler and the Spanish lyrics I heard last night. Offline options open, time expands, and what was urgent moments ago slips into the recesses of my mind, surprised by the attention I begin to pay to what's at hand. The last line of this poem. And I'll end with this, and it's called The Breath. And there are 2 definitions that I'm from the dictionary that I'm, the American Heritage Dictionary, that I'm using in the poem. 1 is the act or process of breathing, and 4 is the definition of breath as spirit or vitality, life. How little I've considered you a good spirit living inside me. The sages say we are born with an infinite number, the sages say we are born with a finite number of breaths we can shorten or lengthen. Women birth with breath, swimmers coordinate their breath. We die taking our last breath. How many have I wasted, jagged, short, second wind? In meditation, we use the breath to gather the inner winds, calm the mind. The butterfly on the golden rock, the whale rising to the surface, the surfer on her red board, 3 men returning on kayaks, a fisherman stands on the jetty, runners, oyster catchers, seagulls. The world accompanies me as I walk, each breath mixed with ocean air, memories, intuition, epiphanies. We who were sea creatures once now rely on this vital spirit who keeps us alive. Let's not forget the dance of inhale and exhale, the movement of all the organs, a symphony and cacophony at the same time, this precious orchestra of life.
Yeah, press the green button and four.
Oh, here.
At the same time. Okay.
Sorry. Thank you, Michelle. Say your last line again.
Oh, the last one.
Yeah.
The precious orchestra of life.
The precious orchestra of life is what we would like to thank you all for bringing to us. It was wonderful. CCNY, Michelle, David, Anne, Nidhi, Samantha, James, Mariah, Kate, Bri, and Jennifer. Vibrant, wonderfully variant afternoon. Please hang out, talk to each other, and even have some water over there. There's no wine, but you can pretend. And please come back soon. Thank you very much.